Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Misa back.
You're listening to Making Tracks. This is episode 218. I'm your co-host, Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who is sitting in his palatial suite at work when he should be sitting at the Oscars. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Still defrosting after the weekend.
Okay, so tell us, why were you so cold at the weekend?
Because it was a bit of a loaded segue, really, wasn't it? So I was at Pinewood for the Futures Festival, which is a careers fair expo that is put on by Pinewood to educate people and entice people into the world of filmmaking, into the various different crafts and areas where you may not necessarily think about headed. So the greenskeepers, like the guys who put all the foliage into sets, carpentry and lighting and everything, even down to kind of what I do in post-production and colour grading. So interesting, fun weekend for those who managed to get there. I think there was 2,000 visitors per day, so it was quite busy. Because it was February and because film studios are notoriously cold, it was absolutely bloody freezing. But apart from that, me and the Rebel Legion and the 501st UK Garrison and the Droid Builders, we all had a fantastic time.
You are Thor, not the good Thor with a hammer, you are Thor as in thawing out.
Correct. So we had a lovely tour, actually, funny enough, speaking of Thor, on the Friday night around Heffernan Hall, which is kind of a main old building. There is in there what is now known as the 007 gym. And I was like, can I just have a sneak peek? I don't want to go and work out or do anything weird like that, but can I just go and check it out? Because also it looks very similar to the gymnasium that Zoran has in A View to Kill. But alas, I couldn't, because they didn't know if Chris Hemsworth was working out then or not for Doomsday. So I was like, well, here you go. I let the God of Thunder work out in peace unless he needs a spotter.
You don't want to show him up, Mark. That's all it is.
Absolutely, yeah. Don't want to outbench him now.
Don't outbench him. We've got loads of news to get through, limited window of time to do it in. So, Revenge of the Sith, it's coming back to cinemas around the world. It's coming to cinemas in the States on the 25th of April, 2025. So if you're in the USA and Canada, I would imagine North America, you'll have the chance to see Sith once again. It's hitting international territories as well. Hopefully here in the UK, we got Phantom Menace last year for the 25th anniversary. And also, we got a lovely, really, really nice new poster from Matt Ferguson to celebrate. I can't believe it's 20 years since Sith came out. It still feels fresh to me. But having this film back in the cinemas, we had Phantom last year. We've got Sith this year. Poor old Attack of the Clones missed its anniversary, so we're probably not getting that one. What do you make of Sith being back?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Sith. No, well, obviously we have seen Sith in the cinema since its original release, but probably not as many times, I think, as Phantom. Feels like I've seen that more at re-releases. And poor old Clones, doesn't really get much of a look in these days. Makes sense. Revenge of the Sith is, I think, probably heralded by many as the jewel of the prequel crown. Anytime we get a chance to see the original Star Wars trilogies, I use plural there, on the big screen, I think it's perfect. So we should just go and make time to go and do it.
Absolutely. Like you say, this is a film, like all the Star Wars films now, that pretty much lives on Disney+. So the chance to see it in the cinema is fantastic. It was great seeing Phantom last year. It was great seeing Jedi in 2023. Yeah. Clones, we missed it in 2022. The 25th of Clones is in 2027. I've got a sneaky suspicion that another film celebrating a big anniversary might just overwhelm it.
Oh, could you imagine if they actually went, do you know what? We're gonna do the 25th anniversary of Attack of the Clones and skip the 50th anniversary of A New Hope. Although maybe they just show all of them.
Yeah.
Chronological order. Start with episode 1 and go all the way through. And this time include Solo, because I know over here in the UK they didn't do that last year.
So frustrating.
Wow, it just seems like, of all the films to miss, why skip it? I reckon they would have been pleasantly surprised with the box office takings on that weekend.
I very much agree.
My name is Kiriana Crader, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
April, we will be, as well as tucking into season 2 of Star Wars Andor, A Star Wars Story as it's correctly known, we will also be watching Revenge of the Sith. Speaking of Andor, A Star Wars Story, season 2 trailer landed this past week. Fantastic trailer, so much cool stuff in it. The music as well was very, very interesting. The Steve Earle music, great choice in my personal opinion.
That's when you disagree, my friend. I didn't like that music.
I like it. It was a mood. It was just totally to tonally set you up for what's coming in this season. So I didn't have a problem with it at all. What did you make of the trailer?
Well, visually, yeah, absolutely everything about it, I think, just looked fantastic. We saw lots of different stuff, lots of Imperial shenanigans and stuff, and lots of Rebel shenanigans. So I think, yeah, as you said, it's definitely setting up the tone of the second season's going to be. It's odd because, like, when we used the Major Tom track for Skeleton Crew, I thought it worked really well. It just seemed to fit perfectly. This one, I don't know why, it just felt like it was working against the type of imagery a little bit. It just felt like it kind of needed more of a slightly traditional, big, epic cinematic score. Especially when you've got explosions and you've got those Imperial squads kind of running down corridors and stuff like that. However, that's just my own personal opinion, and I am slightly tone deaf, so it's fine.
Handy when you're in a band like your good self. I liked it. I thought it was cool because it was so different. And we had that season of Willow a couple of years ago that had the rock music at the end. And some episodes it worked really well, and other episodes not so much. Acolyte last year had that one episode with the original music track, which as a unique thing for that particular episode, I thought again worked pretty well. This I had no problem with it because I'm 99.9% sure you're not going to hear that Steve Earle song in the actual season.
Probably not. Okay. But then actually, do you remember we got that kind of like heavy metal rock drums in Andor season 1? That was part of the score and stuff. That wasn't like just that wasn't just like a random track.
Is a tangent, Mark, as a metal guy, a fellow metal fan and performer. When you get electric guitar coming into Star Wars, we just mentioned Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
When you're on Coruscant, when Obi-Wan's hanging onto the probe, going through the Coruscant traffic, you've got some proper full-on. They might as well have got Satriani into play. It's full on metal guitar. And over the years, remember that the Imperial March, the Metallica version of Imperial March that you heard? Yeah. It was from one of the computer games. Was it Supremacy, I think? It was from Star Wars Supremacy. Whilst it doesn't work per se, in small doses, it kind of does. Because this didn't work for you on the Andor trailer, doesn't preclude the thought of in future trailers something a bit different.
Of course, that's like I said, like with the Major Tom thing, it kind of worked pretty well for Skeleton Crew, I thought. I think it just tonally, it just didn't work. I mean, it's not like a big deal. It's certainly not like I'm like, right, I'm boycotting season 2 of Andor because I didn't like the choice of music track in the trailer.
Yeah.
So, hey, what will be, will be. And I'm sure when it comes out, I'll love it. So it's fine. I'm not even remotely bothered by that.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
We've dealt with Revenge of the Sith. We've dealt with Star Wars Andor. There's another major, but no less equally important bit of news this week. It's regarding Kathleen Kennedy on rumours of her departure from Lucasfilm. Earlier in the week, it seemed like the Puck website had broke the news that she was leaving, that she was off at the end of 2025. Fantha and a lot of other sites commented on it, some more vociferously than others. We were a little bit more speculative in our coverage of that particular bit of news. But Kathleen herself came out when she collected the Oscar Wilde Award alongside her husband, Frank Marshall. She said to Deadline, this has all been manufactured. I'm going to read it out because I think we can work our way through her comments because there's plenty of it. Deadline said, the flurry of press coverage, it sounds like chaos. What's the reality? To which Kathleen Kennedy said, chaos? There's never been any chaos because we know exactly what the plan is. And we've been talking about it, as I said, non-stop for the last couple of years because for obvious reasons, I'm not going to be here forever. George asked me 13 years ago to step in, and now I'm looking at who's going to replace me. And as I said, we have a bench of people internally to handle the business, the creative side. The job has also grown since I stepped in. There was no streaming. There weren't a lot of the things that we're involved in right now going on. So it has grown. So let's take that paragraph for a start, Mark. No chaos as far as she's concerned. She's probably got an ear on, but I don't imagine she's slavishly going through X and Threads and other places to see what people are saying about Kathleen Kennedy on the hashtag. She does say internally, we've got people who are going to handle the business and the creative side. Internally, do you think she means Disney? Do you think she means Lucasfilm? Where do you think that sits?
Right. So, interestingly, this topic of conversation came up on the weekend, actually, a couple of times, but not actually about if anybody thought Kathleen Kennedy was going to be leaving anytime soon or anything like that. But we were just talking about, when she does leave, what is the succession plan? And I think it makes perfect sense. Bearing in mind, this company is growing. And as you said, there's different revenues and avenues that they need to now cover. I think you don't look at just one person to replace Kathleen Kennedy. You look at least two. And you look at one person who looks after the business side of Lucasfilm. So that is a person who gets to play around with and have all the fun with HR and employee wellness initiatives and all that kind of nonsense. And then you have somebody who's purely focused on the creative. And then obviously the creative side of stuff is probably a little bit easier for at least us fans to go, well, surely that's got to be Dave Filoni. Obviously the other side, the other execs, let's call it the Lucasfilm business exec as opposed to creative exec, that could be, I guess, anybody who's really got experience running a studio or like a production company such as Lucasfilm. And there's probably still not that many people. And you'd have to look at like some of these bigger studios to kind of even have a good idea of who that could be. I know even in my day job is sometimes very technical, sometimes highly creative. And if I'm doing something highly creative, i.e. I'm doing a color grade with a client, I'm not interested in if another base light has gone down or we need to talk about a workflow issue for a production issue coming up. I'm doing the creative stuff, and you need to have that creative focus to get the best out of the person who's doing the job. But I think the fact that, coming back to what Kathleen said, she's obviously thinking about near to long-term future in the company, and actually, how long does she stay in there, and how long does she want to stay in there, and also then how long does it take to transition to somebody new? Do we know roughly how long she was kind of really in before it was announced? And how long did George stay afterwards?
From what I understand, she was I think she was co-president with George for about 6 months before he stepped away. Yeah. He's shown her the ropes. As she says later, and I might get to it as I'm reading her post out, but she says, she was not an executive in this sense. She was a hand-on nuts and bolts producer. And so she's had to learn as she's been going on. But presumably, in terms of running Lucasfilm and the ropes of what that entails, George gave her all the tools that she needed to get started. And let's not get beat around the bush. She started pretty hot. She started with Rebels. They were already working on Solo. Force Awakens was in movement. That came out the gate to over $2 billion. So she had the best start. And as she says there was no streaming when I came in. A lot of the things that we're doing right now weren't a thing. So the company has grown and she's had to kind of move with it.
No, exactly that. And I suppose that's just part of the role of any kind of CEO, really, isn't it? You have to be always thinking beyond what you're doing now as to what the next thing is. Where are we going next with streaming? What is the next platform that we might need to be, considering, and how do people consume the content? So that is obviously one thing. And then you've, like I said, you've got to then worry about where are these stories coming from? Who's doing these stories? Who do we want? Who's hot right now who actually can make good Star Wars?
She does mention that. Deadline's next question. How far down the road do you expect before a change gets made, and then off you go and produce these two big Star Wars things? So they're referring into the earlier part of the conversation where she's talking about some future projects. And Kathleen says, we'll probably make an announcement months or a year out. I would imagine that's as much for the shareholders as anybody else with a public traded company. And I have every intention of sticking around to help that person be successful. So there's your succession plan. I'm already producing the Mandalorian movie, and Sean Levy's movie is after that. And then, interesting next point from Deadline. I recall those same retirement predictions were rendered a while ago, and you re-upped, and here you are. What do you make of this fixation on your job status? And goodness knows we've talked about this plenty of times on Making Tracks. And she says, I truly don't know. And any discussion previously about me retiring or quitting or any of those things, that's complete rumour mill, because through all these reports, I've just continued doing my job and continuing my contract. Nothing unusual. It has all just been manufactured. So we have, and I say we as a fandom, because there's been a kind of a rollercoaster effect to the success of the Star Wars projects that have come out. Force Awakens was fantastic. Last Jedi still does $1.3 billion, but that's nearly half of what the first film did. Then Rogue One exceeds expectations by doing $1 billion, and Solo doesn't do so good, but you can kind of explain why when you dig into it. And then Mando comes out and just explodes Disney Plus and is the biggest thing ever, but then numbers dip to the point of Acolyte actually being cancelled. So it has been an up and down roller coaster, and that's not even factoring in things like Galaxy's Edge, which is a success, but the Galactic Star Cruiser, which clearly wasn't. So up and down, but through it all, we've talked about how long is she going to be around of Kathleen Kennedy, and here she is saying all those conversations are manufactured. I've just been doing my job. What do you make of that?
I kind of feel for her a little bit. It must be like being the Manchester United manager. Every time you read a headline or something, you're basically on your way out.
Yeah.
which probably isn't good for anybody. I'd like to then hope that there is reassurance if said person needs reassurance from higher up, because I guess the only people who can really fire her would be Bob Iger. And that's it. If they've got confidence, if the shareholders got confidence, then the fans will never be happy, and this will be it. Like when we get Ahsoka season 2 or Andor season 2, it will be split down the middle, and then there'll be some people who will be like, yeah, give Dave Filoni the creative job, and there'll be other people who'll be like, actually, nah, he's better off just doing animations or something like that. Keep him what he's good at rather than push him further. So I spoke to a couple of people on the weekend who will remain completely anonymous. So they were saying there's potentially about 10 different movies in the pipeline at the moment. It's basically just a race. It's a race to get one to the point whereby it can be put into production. So there's no beyond really like Ahsoka at this point and Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah.
Nothing really confirmed because there's been writers firings and rewrites and stuff like that. And some projects are closer than others. And even actually one of them's down to like talent availability. So it's going to be interesting to see what does come and whether or not some of these productions, muscle their way through into production sooner than later.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
On the numbers anyway, in the box office numbers, you can't really say that Kathleen Kennedy's a dismal failure at Lucasfilm by any stretch of imagination.
No, absolutely not. And Disney don't make stuff for the hell of it. They wouldn't make a sequel if there wasn't a profit in it. So clearly they're hitting targets that they need to hit. Obviously, outside of Solo, obviously numbers-wise, outside of Acolyte, that's evident. And it does seem to be the case, going back to that point, that when something goes wrong, it's Kathleen Kennedy's fault. But when something goes right, it's not to Kathleen Kennedy's credit.
Yeah, it's the director. It's like it's Tony Gilroy or it's Dave Filoni or whoever. Yeah, it's Jon Favreau.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure as a seasoned producer with the list of work that she's got, she probably doesn't really give much of her stuff. But nevertheless, the public perception is definitely sort of skewing that way. In terms of the projects, as you've just very neatly referred to, she does mention the Simon Kinberg trilogy. She goes straight into it. We're absolutely rolling fast and furiously. That has gone exceptionally well. He's literally going to start the script as we speak. We'll see something probably around June. If you remember, he did some work with us years ago with the animated shows, referring to Rebels, which was a really wonderful collaborative experience. And then he got very busy with X-Men and then recently became available again. And he segged into this space beautifully. We're really excited about where that's headed. And the question is, from Deadline, there are spin-offs and then there's the core Star Wars story broken into trilogies. Is this a continuation of that? And she says, this is the next iteration, the new saga that moves us into the future. So she's not saying it's 10, 11, and 12.
No.
She does say, clearly, it's a trilogy. It's the next iteration. What shape does that take? I mean, do you think it will be 10, 11, and 12? Do you think it's a completely separate thing? The Skywalker saga is done. So do you just think this is the start of another rollercoaster of trilogies?
Everybody at Pinewood last year was referring to the Rey film as episode 10.
Yeah, I think we did on the site.
Exactly. So does that mean that actually it's not? Or does that mean it's actually the iteration after, maybe that Rey trilogy isn't a Rey trilogy and it's actually just a Rey film and it's an iteration after that? Then interesting. Do you know what? I would skip forward a couple of 100 years. I think you give it a whacking great big ton of space, literally, no pun intended, in the timeline. Don't then just suddenly make everything like 1970s sci-fi and it look all kind of shiny and stuff. Maybe from the point of the end of Rise of Skywalker, you've got 250 years of just a downward spiral of the whole galaxy. The whole galaxy is plunged into utter chaos. Intergalactic megalomaniac who owns like a massive multinational corporation or something is trying to take over, I don't know, the Outer Rim.
I don't know where you got the inspiration for that from. Wow.
I don't know. I'm just kind of like, I'm vibing on George Lucas. And this is the thing, isn't it? It's so easy for us to go, oh, yeah, a bit like what they did with New Jedi Order Legacy when it was like Cade Skywalker and it was set, 100 and something odd years.
150 years on, yeah.
There's something to be said for that, almost to quote Kylo, kind of let the past die a little bit. If you're going to start a new era and a new iteration, maybe give it that space so you can play around with that kind of timeline should you need to, if you're going to push forward. And I think Star Wars needs to kind of keep on pushing forward, I think. We're so congested with stuff that's kind of been happening around, from Phantom Menace through to Rise of Skywalker, really. Yeah. It's getting very congested. We're going to find sooner rather than later somebody's going to go, do you know what? We're going to do a reboot and now we're just going to have the OT trilogy and the prequel trilogy and, maybe not even, sequel trilogy, but say sequel trilogy. And then we're going to reboot everything else around that and start again. And then we're going to end up retreading the same stuff over and over again. So I think you need to do something completely fresh, completely different. Do it big and do it well.
Hello, Fanthatrax. Fanthatrax. I screwed it up. Hi, Fanthatrax.
Speaking of moving forward, the next question was in relation to the Sean Levy project, to which Kathleen says, that's also in the future. It's all post episode 9. Sean's is a standalone Star Wars story that will take place post 9, maybe 5 or 6 years out. That puts it between Rise of Skywalker and the Rey film, just to say. And Mandalorian really stands on its own because there we're dealing with a whole other era in the New Republic. We have other developments going on in that space as well. So maybe they're referring to TV there. So that's the space that we're pretty much focused on at the moment, because obviously with Mandalorian, and I think she's talking about the film, we have a pretty good sense of where that's going. And with this, it's all pretty much new characters. We may bring some of the characters back from the sequel saga, but pretty much new characters. So now we know the Sean Levy film, if that is a film that includes Ryan Gosling, it's not going to be set way back. It's not going to be set way out. It's going to be set 5 or 6 years after The Rise of Skywalker. So we're in the post-Resistance, post-First Order era. I don't think anybody knew where that was going to be set until she said these words.
Well, interesting news, because that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier on. Somebody kind of mentioned to me that because of Ryan Gosling's schedule, there is basically a finite window. If they don't land this production and get it ready for a certain date, and they didn't tell me when, but how it's like he won't be then available for the next 2 or 3, 4 years afterwards. Yeah. Like I said, maybe get Oscar Isaac back or something.
If they set something 4 or 5 years after Rise of Skywalker, we are actually in real time 4 or 5 years after Rise of Skywalker. So you could assume or hope that some, if not all, of those characters from that era come back into the story to some degree, unless Poe just retires to a backwater planet, which I don't see, or Finn goes off and trains with Rey, or whatever it might be. You could imagine that those characters, if that is the film that Gosling's in and Sean Levy's directing it, then there's a very good chance that you will see some, if not all, of those characters in that film as well.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's cool, because then you've got that little bit of connective tissue to the sequel trilogy in that. So, yeah. And then who knows? I'm sure that will maybe connect in some way or another with Daisy Ridley's film, with the Rey film. Even if it's, dare I say it, like a post-credit type scene or something, just not post-credit, please. Just, but, maybe the last scene before the iris into the credits. That could be something interesting. The future is still bright and the future is still Star Wars, so I guess we'll just wait and see what happens.
Hi, this is Alexander Freed, and you are listening to Fanthatrax.
The James Mangold project, the Dawn of the Jedi project, she mentions that. She says, yep, he's working on his script right now. Simon's working on scripts right now. Sean, we've been working with him for about 1.5 years. These guys are available now. This is very much in key with what you've just said. Jim Mangold, he got delayed a bit because of the Dylan movie and the award season, which we are speaking post-Oscars. He didn't win for that. You have to accommodate top talent to a certain extent, and quality is so important with what we're trying to do. I like to wait for people that I think are passionate and really good to step into Star Wars. And the final person that gets mentioned, Taika Waititi, she says, well, I keep waiting for Taika, and he's working with another writer now. He's so busy. I love him. I think if we ever get to get a script from Taika, it's going to be fantastic. I already saw a first act that I loved, but tying him down, it's tricky. So very much like you've just said, tying these major actors, major producers, major directors, no easy task. But if you're going to do it, you've got to do it right.
Maybe I'm misreading this, but if you've been offered a Star Wars film to write and direct, wouldn't you write the bloody thing? Not go off and do something else. Surely, if that was going to be like the next thing or the next big thing, okay, maybe you step away after you've done some Star Wars stuff just to have a bit of a break. Just stepped away from Mando or whatever it was. He last
like Tony Gilroy's probably going to do after Andor's finished.
Yeah, but then if that's what you're meant to be doing, unless of course especially if he's written the first act, that would mean that he's got some ideas and he's actually at least set the table. At least, even though I haven't brought the starter yet, but the table's been set. So surely from that point, you would just try and break it down and write the damn thing. It seems weird to kind of step away like that.
We're speaking from inside because we're fans and we only want the best for Star Wars. And we are kind of myopic and thinking, what's better, what's more important than Star Wars? When are you going to do a bigger thing than Star Wars? Well, we can't be quite so blinkered now because there is Marvel out there. There are other things out there that are huge. And these are actors and directors. All of them. Gosling's been nominated for Oscars. Taika's been nominated for Oscars. Won Oscars. So there's people there that are top tier Hollywood talent. It's not where we were with Star Wars maybe in the George era. It was very, very few actors within the first 2 trilogies outside of Alec Guinness, Harrison Ford, being Oscar nominated was the exception to rule. Now we look at Star Wars, Natalie's won an Oscar. Liam Neeson has been nominated. There's more actors at that level now in and around Star Wars.
Absolutely. Do you know what? It was probably quite frustrating for anybody, an actor or a writer or director, that, you know, you're on the press junket scene for like your production, but you're really proud of, and when everybody, all they want to do is talk about like when you're going to do a Star Wars for your next project, or maybe not even your next project, maybe the project after that or after that. But yeah, as you say, we are very myopic. You need to remember that.
We started the week anticipating, some people hoping, some people not, that Kathleen Kennedy was walking away. And she's very definitively made the landscape very clear. She's not going anywhere. There's a succession plan that even within the broader conversation, it sounds like, even when she steps down as president of Lucasfilm, that she will still continue to produce. So even when she's not in the big chair, she's still going to be involved in Star Wars as a producer. So there's lots of options on the plate. She said definitively, I am not retiring. She may step down from Lucasfilm, but she's not leaving Lucasfilm entirely, and she's certainly not retiring. So there's plenty more to come from Kathleen Kennedy.
Look forward to it. Well, that is all we have got time for this week's episode. So thank you very much for staying with us till the very, very end. And by doing that, that kind of makes you an official Fantha Tracker. If you've got a listener's question and you want to send it in, then Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can do it.
I definitely can, and I want listeners' questions. So if you're hearing this, send in some listeners' questions. We'll read them out on future episodes. Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fanthatracks TV and Fanthatracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fanthatracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fanthatracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news. And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, matey. I think I'm done for this episode as well. Until the next episode of Making Tracks, everybody have a fantastic Star Wars week, whatever that means to you. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.